Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's April 13th, early afternoon, nice day. And I am here with Commissioner Dana Barrett, who's running for Georgia Secretary of State. Dana, good afternoon, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Great to have you here. Secretary of State's obviously one of the bigger offices at the state level. Some would say maybe probably even the number two office as far as power goes, and that sort of thing. Lieutenant Governor in theory, but Secretary of State has more power. So, what I typically do when I get these interviews going is turn it over to the candidate to introduce yourself, give us a little background about you, whatever you think's relevant. So I'm going to do that right now. Turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself to us. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I am, as you mentioned, currently a Fulton County Commissioner.
Mhm.
I have been serving as a commissioner I'm in my fourth year. And, it's been a fight to protect our elections really from day one
Right.
in this role. One of the reasons I ran for county commission was because of the role that county commissioners do have in protecting elections, but I did not expect it to be as dramatic, shall we say, as it's
Mhm.
been in Fulton County. My background before that was mostly in technology and small business. I'm a mom, a single mom, and I'm a breast cancer survivor. And I never thought I would get into politics, but when 2016 happened and Donald Trump was elected the first time, like a lot of people,
Right.
my trajectory changed. And sort of over the years following that, I sort of got more and more political over time and just felt like I had the bandwidth to stand up and try to push back and that's what I've been doing for the last however many years. So that's sort of uh, what landed me in the county commission race, and then because of all of the chaos in Fulton County around elections, that sort of got me into the conversation about Secretary of State, and that's
Okay.
where we are now.
Would you say that's the probably the main reason why you're running for Secretary of State is Fulton County has
Yeah,
been they've been a target of a lot of this election business that Trump tried to keep stirred up. So that's probably the prime motivator there.
yeah, I mean, I would say the fact that Georgia is such a critical swing state, and you know, that's why we're seeing all of these attacks, and we just really need a strong Secretary of State who is going to do more than the bare minimum that we've seen from that office for the last number of years. Um, and it's going to be a tough race in November. So we also really need a candidate with experience that can win in November because some of the folks running on the Republican side are really quite dangerous and very
Right.
much MAGA controlled and all of that. So I think when I was asked to consider running for Secretary of State, that was the primary driver. But when I took a look at the office overall and everything it does around business licensing and registration and
Mhm.
securities registration and fraud investigation, a lot of it fit really well with my sort of pre-political background and really spoke to me. So, as I had as a small business owner. I had two different kinds of businesses over the years. I had a technology business, but I also had a Main Street bookstore, coffee shop in downtown Roswell. And I went through all the same struggles that with both of my businesses, really, that all small business owners go through, trying to get licensed and work through all the different governmental bodies you need to work through to make it all happen. And we could do so much better for Georgians than what's there now. And so I think, sort of learning about the rest of the job really motivated me to say yes.
Okay, thank you. There, I think the Secretary of State office, like we referenced a little bit ago, it's a powerful office. There's a lot of stuff that it covers. You've already talked about the two big ones, I think. Elections and licensure, I think, are the two where most people interact with that office the most, and we can take those one at a time. What do you think about the current functioning of the election division first? We'll do that. What could be better? What can a new Secretary of State do to make that office run better when it comes to the elections part of the office?
Well, I always want to be really clear in that Georgia's elections run well for the most part. All of this rhetoric that we hear about, our elections not being trustworthy, is really MAGA marketing. It's an
Right.
attempt to get people to not vote. So I think, overall, our elections work well. I think where there are improvements to be made is how well they're being executed across all 159 counties. I think, as you probably
Mhm.
well know, every county has a different budget. And different pressures on their budget. And so I think the Secretary of State can do a better job of making sure that all 159 counties are able to perform their elections to the same standard so that every single eligible Georgian anywhere in the state is able to vote with the same ease as any other Georgian anywhere in the state. So just because you're not in a wealthy county like Fulton, for example, doesn't mean you should not have the same access to the ballot box.
Right.
I also think there's a lot that can be done. Of course, we need to rebuild trust, whether we like it or not. Trust in the system has been undermined by Trump and then his MAGA cronies, and frankly, the Republicans really have been at this for years because they don't have any ideas to bring to the table. They have a goal of making sure the least number of people can vote. We,
Right.
of course, want the opposite. We believe in participation, but they have undermined the system. And so, what do we do to restore that? I think there's a lot of conversation, as you well know, about paper ballots versus machines and hand mark
Yeah.
and all of that. And I think really what we need at the end of the day is a system that is going to be the most accurate and foolproof, which means it's going to have to involve technology, but that also has some sort of a paper receipt so that people, when they're casting their ballot in the machine, feel confident that what is being read by the machine is what they put in. So I think there is a middle ground there that will work best and that will have the most longevity. I always think about my daughter and younger folks saying, "You want me to do what with a hand marked what?" Like they think
Right.
we're crazy. And so I think we need to have systems that are going to work well for the younger generation as well and
Yeah.
be trustworthy. So that's going to be a really interesting balancing act, I think, for the next Secretary of State, and one that I feel like very well equipped to take on. And the last thing I'll say about the elections piece is right now there is information available on the Secretary of State website, but you have to know how to find it. It's not
Mhm.
easily found. It's so. And again, different counties do different jobs in terms of getting information out to voters. And so
Right.
I think instead of the Secretary of State's office just being a repository of data where people can go and look, the office could do a far better job of actually outreach, of actually sending information out to people where they are, whether it's through social media, whether it's through an app, whether it's through email or text messaging or whatever works best for people, so that everybody understands, when the registration deadlines are, when the elections are, who's on their ballot, et cetera. I think there's a lot more the Secretary of State's office could do on that front, and I think they should. I mean, I think in states where they do a better job of this, they get greater participation.
Right. Okay. And the second piece, the one that I've heard people complain about this pretty much all my life. I mean, this seems to be something that has just plagued our particular office, our particular aspect of the state government. It's the licensing issue. Why is it that Georgia seems to be among the worst states? Or maybe I'm exaggerating it. I don't know, but I mean, it seems to be that there's so many complaints about this over the years. Why is it it's that way, and what can we do to improve that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that this kind of goes back to my thinking really about what the Secretary of State's office has been doing for far too many years, which is the bare minimum.
Right,
The systems work, but to your point, they work slowly. They're hard to follow. They're hard to understand. The wait times are too long to get licenses. They're not mobile friendly, the sites. There's a
right,
lot of things that are wrong. And I think this is really where my technology background will come into play. I've done a lot of work over the years helping modernize systems, coming up with custom systems. I have a lot of knowledge and a really deep bench of experts in the field who I'm very well connected to. So my plan really is to put a technology advisory council together during the campaign so that day one, when I take office in 27, I'll be able to get right to work on a full audit of all of those systems and a modernization roadmap, if you will, to try to improve those systems, hopefully within the first, you gotta look and listen for a little while. But once we are able to really get a handle on it, to hopefully have something really improved within a 2-year time frame. And I think there's some low-hanging fruit that we can fix more quickly for folks. And I think everything from, again, making the site mobile friendly. I was talking to a contractor at the Quad County Democrats get together, and he was saying, he's a general contractor, and when he has to pull subcontractor licenses, he's, out in the field with his phone, and he can't do it because the site is not mobile friendly. So he's got to work all day and then go home and get on, his laptop
Right.
to do the
Right.
work. And so, those kinds of things are just unacceptable. And when you think about also the wait times to get licenses, um, every day that someone is waiting to get a license is a day that they can't put food on the table.
Right.
When we talk about all the affordability issues in Georgia, part of that is what things cost, and part of it is our ability to make money. And so, if the Secretary of State's office is standing in the way of people being able to make their living, that's a problem.
Right. Well, okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I think I wasn't aware that the technology was as behind as it was, but that would explain a lot. What I hear
Yep.
is just the slow times and difficult in accessing things. So,
Yep.
thank
And
you for
listen,
that.
I think the outreach piece is there too. I think we can do a better job in that office of making sure people have the information they need to get, right now you get reminders when your things are, you have to renew, but that's about
Mhm.
it. So I think we can do a
Yeah.
better job on that front too. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Are there any other issues? I know that the Secretary of State does more than that. Are there any other issues that you would think that come off the top of your head that you need to focus on as our future Secretary of State besides
You
the
know,
elections and
I
licensing?
will say that as much as I am so focused on the elections piece because it is so critical and so under attack right now, the idea for me about the office is really about protecting Georgians and supporting Georgians in a lot of different ways and sort of empowering them, right? So part of it is about, as we talked about, the licensing side, the business side, but also on the fraud investigation. We've just seen the big case that went through which ultimately was a win for the Secretary of State's office. They were late to the party in investigating some of the fraud that's gone on in the state, and that robs people of their retirements,
Mhm.
of their savings. And so I think there's a lot more there that can be done to protect Georgians as well in terms of being proactive. On making sure that our registered securities in the state are operating the way that they should. So, I think there's some work there in the Secretary of State's office alone, and I think there's some partnership there that can be done with the Attorney General's office as well.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so you kind of referenced this a little bit. I always ask a candidate what sets you apart. I think there's let's see, there's four people in the
Yes,
primary, right?
yes,
Four. Okay. So
yep.
what sets you apart? What gives you an advantage over you can just talk in general or specifically, but what gives you an advantage over the other three you think that makes you uniquely qualified for this?
Yeah, I'm glad you said uniquely qualified because I actually usually say that in my stump speech, but I do believe I am uniquely qualified. I think, look, I am the only candidate in the race on the Democratic side who beat a longtime Republican incumbent to win my current seat in a district that was gerrymandered for him. So I know how to win against a Republican in a challenging election. I've done it before, and I have a really great team in place to help me do it again. I have the small business background that really I think will help me understand what small business owners need. And I've been traveling around the state talking to small business owners. So I think I really have that piece in a unique way. And the technology background also I think makes me very unique. And then of course the biggest thing of all is I've been on the front lines fighting to protect our elections in Fulton County. I faced jail time last year and I still did not back down because it was that important to protect our elections in Fulton County. So I've proven that I can stand up not only to another candidate in November, but to MAGA and to Trump, and that I'm willing to sort of do what it takes to protect the voters in Georgia.
Thank you. If now we're looking ahead a little bit, let's say you win the primary, okay, and you're part of the combined campaign that's going to be coming out. Combined campaigns are something that we haven't always done well. as the Democratic Party. In your opinion, or what's your perspective on that? What can we do more as a slate of candidates that you're a part of? What can we do to make that effort successful in place of what we've seen in the past sometimes, where we kind of shot ourselves in the foot and lost opportunities we could have taken advantage of? What can we do differently this time?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think there's probably a variety of things that have, made it more challenging for Democrats over the years. But I think we're in a really unique situation this year. First of all, we have a lot of really good candidates in the primary for a lot of these statewide seats.
Right.
And we also have some House races, I think, that hopefully we can win as
Mhm.
well. So I think in general, I think the coordination needs to be, and we've done an okay job of coordinating. I don't know that that's it. I
Yeah.
think sometimes it gets lost in the messaging. And sometimes it's like all hinging on the gubernatorial candidate and sort of
Right.
the up or down of that candidate. I think this year we're going to see something different because there's a lot of strength in the folks that are running in all of the statewide. So I think the
Mhm.
idea of us being a more cohesive team will be really important. And it's good for me personally because I actually know all of the other candidates and have worked with several of them in various ways over the years, whether it be in other campaigns where we work together on the road. I don't won't go through the list, but I work really well with a number of them. So I really look forward to a more sort of coordinated approach in terms of what we're saying and how we're working together. And look, I think you mentioned earlier that the Secretary of State's race is sort of one of the more powerful ones at the top of the
Mhm.
ticket.
Right.
I think there's a lot of interest this year, in particular, really ever since the whole thing happened in 2020 with Trump asking Raffensperger for the 11,000 plus votes.
Right.
The office has just been really elevated, not only here, but in Arizona and some of the other states, right? So there's a lot of interest right now in making sure our elections are secure. And, we were hearing messaging just this week at the Carter Lewis dinner from John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock specifically about our election. So I think everybody's going to be on the same page about what our key issues are this year. So I think if we stay focused on what's really plaguing people every day, the affordability issues, if we really meet people where they are, and we stay focused on that while ensuring that we have this core cornerstone of democracy, which is, of course, free, fair, secure elections and the right to vote. So I
Right.
think, I think it's going to be really good. And I think we're going to have a lot of, I think we already have a really good amount of momentum coming into this year after the PSC
Yeah.
races. And so I think, there's a lot of positivity, and I just think we need to not let that die off. We need to just keep that
Right.
energy going into the general in November.
Okay. Yeah, and we saw that up here. We just last week we had our special election here in Northwest Georgia, and our numbers are definitely up. The enthusiasm is definitely up. We
Yeah.
we will have something like 90% of the state assembly races being filled this time, so we've got more candidates than ever. So I think we are in a good position. Hopefully, we can coordinate all that and make it work for us in November because I think we got a great chance to win a lot of these seats. I think we covered most of the big picture issues about Secretary of State. Is there anything else that we need to talk about that you can think of, or I think we've covered
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah, I
sometimes
think we have
sometimes I
too.
forget. I don't want to forget anything. So,
No,
but
no. I mean, look, I do think, one of the things I've really been focused on in my current role as a commissioner and really at the end of the day, it really is about making Georgians' lives better, and the affordability piece is really key. I mean, with the gas prices going up like they are right
yeah,
now, with
right,
being in this war of choice and, the cost of healthcare, these things are all really plaguing Georgians. And so, I think if we don't lose sight of that, and I think the Secretary of State's office, while it doesn't deal directly with all of those things, the
mhm,
only way we fix them is if we get to choose the leaders that are bringing real solutions to the table. And so that's, we have to have free, fair, secure elections to do that. So I think if we just keep those things in mind and together, I think as a party, we're going to do great this year. And I'm excited to talk to you, and I'm grateful for the conversation. And, I'm hopeful I'll be able to get up there and come see you all in person too.
Yeah, I hope so. We have a barbecue coming up in June. We put, we've gotten better about putting our stuff on Mobilize so people can see it. So I hope that you guys can do that. June, it'll be sort of in between the well, with four of you, there may very well be a runoff. So it'll be sort of after the May primary, but before the runoff. So we may have that opportunity. I'd love to see you up here. And you kind of just gave your. I always like the candidate to give a stump speech at the end, just like a minute or two, why you should vote for me. You kind of just did, but go if you want to just sort of summarize and give us that to close
Yeah,
us out. Go
I
ahead.
I mean, to be fair, I do think I have kind of given you all the bits and pieces, but
Yeah, right.
I'm
Let's
really
put it all
focused.
together now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I am really focused on the kinds of things that are affecting Georgians every day, and the issues that we all care about, from education to common sense, gun laws to affordability. All of those things will only get fixed if we get to choose our leaders. And that's really what's driving me to want to protect our elections. That's what drove me to say, yeah, if you have to put me in jail, then put me in jail because I'm not going to put election deniers on our board. I mean, this is so, so critical, and we're really at a crossroads, I think, as a country. Um, and I do feel like I have a unique set of qualifications for the job between my technology background and my small business background, and then the fact that I've just been in the fight in Fulton County. I know how elections work. I know how to fight back, and I'm not going to back down. So, I really think that's my plea to voters is to give us the best fighting chance to win in November and to protect ourselves leading into the 2028 presidential election as well.
Okay. Well, Dana Barrett, thank you so much for popping in here and giving us a chat on what you're up to, what your campaign's about, and why you're running. That's important that we get the message out to as many people as we can, and that's what we're trying to do here. And thank you for helping us in that.
Absolutely.
Hope you have a great rest of the day, and I hope your campaign goes great for you too.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. I really appreciate the time.
All right. Thank you so much.